6 months ago, this was nothing but plain grass. Today it's overflowing with fruit trees, vegetables and fresh fruit right outside my door. In this video, I'll take you through the journey of how I transformed a simple yard into a thriving food forest and show you what's possible in just half a year. I decided on building raised beds for the vegetable gardens and found some non-treated hardwood timber from a local seller on Marketplace. I could fit 4 beds in this area that measured 2.4 meters long by 1.2 meters wide, and that would give me a good amount of space for growing all our food needs. So we spent the day putting them all together, then it was time to fill them. Healthy soil is the foundation of any successful garden. To make it cheaper and faster to fill these gardens, I added layers of chopped down trees and branches before adding layers of organic compost, chicken manure and sugarcane mulch until they were full. The first planting, which was in autumn here in Australia, was to get the garlic and onion in the ground. I planted out half a bed of elephant garlic and Italian purple garlic, and the other half of the bed was Hunter River brown and red Creole onions. These crops won't be ready until November. In another raised bed, I planted out the brassicas. I did 9 Calabrese broccoli and 9 Serenity cauliflowers, which were so tiny and I was so worried that they weren't going to make it. In the next garden bed, I planted out Primo cabbage seedlings in half the bed and filled the other half of the bed with strawberries. I didn't realise what a mistake that was, but we will get to that a little later in the video. And in the 4th garden bed, I planted 3 rows of Carota carrots, 1 row of dragon purple carrots, a row of coriander seeds, a row of dill seeds and some cos lettuce. I also added an arched trellis to 2 of the beds and planted sugar snap peas at the base so that they could grow up and over. I also laid out my fruit trees that were in pots around the edge of the garden so they could get the most of the sun. The mandarin and tangelo trees had fruit. The mandarin was almost ready to pick, which was really exciting as I haven't had these trees for a year yet and they already had fruit on them. And I started some potatoes in grow bags. As the seedlings were growing in the garden beds, I decided to plant out a tropical fruit forest in a different part of the backyard. I planted out 5 banana pups and 5 red papaya trees in the hopes of one day being able to have a constant supply of delicious tropical fruit from my own backyard. If you want to watch that full video of how I did this very cheaply, I will link that video above. Over the weeks, the garden began to thrive and flourish. The tangelos were ready to pick. The cherry tomatoes that I had in grow bags were going crazy, and it was time to harvest ginger that I had planted in a pot back in October. All the seedlings in the garden were starting to get a little bigger. The carrots had sprouted, so had the coriander and dill. The lettuce was getting bigger. The brassicas were slowly getting bigger, which was a relief as I wasn't sure they would make it. The cabbage was slowly growing and the sugar snap peas were climbing up the arched trellis and starting to produce flowers. And I harvested the first lot of potatoes for the year. In July, I planted out my celery seedlings in a grow bag, a pot and some in one of the raised garden beds and started some more potatoes. I also added another row of carrots to garden bed 2. I started planting out some of the fruit trees into the ground. I put the tangelo and imperial mandarin tree at the front to try and give some privacy from the street. And a dwarf O. Henry peach that I had recently purchased. All the veggies in the garden bed were taking their time growing due to it being a very cold winter this year. Also, the bed that contained the cabbage and strawberries didn't get sun until about midday, which made those plants grow even slower. That was the mistake of planting the strawberries where I did. The bed that the lettuce was in was also shady until about 11 AM, but the lettuce was loving it there, and I had a continuous supply of lettuce leaves. The carrots were doing great and almost at a size to pick. I was starting to get a few sugar snap peas and they were so sweet and tasty. The garlic bulbs had popped through and the onions were starting to get bigger. The brassicas were finally getting large, but no heads had started forming yet. The tomatoes were still producing even though we were in the dead of winter. It was also time to harvest the turmeric, which was planted in a pot back in November. One small piece of turmeric produced all of this. Six months later, the transformation is incredible. What was once plain grass is now overflowing with fresh food. The veggies are thriving, the fruit trees are starting to flower and set fruit, and the whole space feels alive and abundant. There's nothing quite like picking your own food from the garden. In just 6 months, I've been able to harvest fresh greens, herbs, and veggies straight from the front yard. It's proof that with a little planning and patience, you can create a food garden almost anywhere. The cauliflowers and broccoli were ready to pick. The broccoli didn't get too big, I think, because it was such a cold winter, but the cauliflower was a decent size. The carrots were ready and I was so happy with the size of them. They were also really sweet and tasty.
That's a honker!
The gross Lizzie tomatoes were starting to ripen, so I picked them and popped them on the table inside to ripen up. The dill and coriander was ready to harvest and I grabbed a whole bunch to preserve. Celery was getting large and not far off being ready to harvest. The onion and garlic was getting large but still not ready till about November. Cabbages were getting large and almost ready to harvest, and the strawberries were producing lots of flowers and fruit now that the sun was getting higher in the sky and onto this bed a lot earlier in the day. The fruit trees were starting to flower, the peach trees had gorgeous pink flowers everywhere, my mini royal cherry tree was forming fruit, and the blueberries were starting to produce lots of flowers and berries. The mulberry trees were starting to grow with little berries, and the flowers spread throughout the garden were making it look beautiful. This front yard has completely changed and so have I. Growing food right outside my door has been so rewarding, and this is only the beginning. I can't wait to see how it continues to grow over the next 6 months and beyond. If this video inspired you to start your own veggie patch, give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend who loves gardening. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button to join me on the journey, and thanks for watching.